Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a subject I've covered quite a few times, which is the hysterical propaganda and lies and untruths and fabrications that surround supposed domestic violence against women. Now, it's pretty much the same all over the Western world. Third world countries or places that aren't controlled by the ideological fanatics don't have anything like that. And so in the countries where women are the most safe, are the richest, are the most pampered, are the most taken care of, apparently or supposedly domestic violence is at its crescendo fever pitch only in the richest countries where the most pampered, protected women live. Go and work that one out if you can. Now, the propaganda, and it's all propaganda, the propaganda is that domestic violence is a massive, huge problem, and it's committed primarily, if not absolutely, by straight white middle class men, not the poor guys, the poor men, or the low guys in the projects. So we're supposed to believe that in suburbs where crimes of every type are almost non-existent. Remember, crimes of every type are almost non-existent. It is only in those very safe suburbs where domestic violence is off the charts. I mean, it's just like, wow, there's a wow factor. There's just so much of it. But in suburbs where violence and crimes of every description are huge. 99% of all the crimes in the nation occur in these areas. That apparently domestic violence does not occur in areas where all the other crimes are off the charts. So again, get your head around that one. But what this does, of course, is illustrate that it's ideological, that they're coming at it from a social power. Middle-class white men have the social power. Therefore, they are the primary oppressors. They are therefore the abusers. And of course, when you look at the definitions of abuse that are being used today, is if she wants to buy yet another lounge suite, on top of the million that she's already bought in the last 12 months, if she wants to buy yet another one and the man says no, then he has committed fucking abuse. If he says no, she can't buy yet another lounge. If he says that, I mean, she doesn't work and he does. If he says that, that means he's fucking Hitler, a fucking Nazi oppressor. That's what he is. If he says she can't buy a lounge. So the definitions of what constitute abuse are very broad, but when we look at the actual abuse of things like threat and violence and things like that, or absolute deprivation, then they don't really seem to want it. The ideological feminist fanatics don't want to count that. They want to count the ideological social power considerations rather than actual domestic violence. Because if they look at actual domestic violence, such as brutality and beating and all these sorts of things, then they have to look at it in a completely different way. They have to look at it through the prism of reality, and this they will not do. So I just want to have a look at now this is an article from a leftist media outlet that constantly bangs on about this. They won't fucking shut up about it. And they're prepared to tell any lie, and any amount of lies to gin it up. I just want something that happened a couple of weeks or so ago in Sydney, I think it was, where the government wanting to make out they were getting tough on domestic violence, they organised these dawn raids, and it was all very dramatic, and police and sirens and flashing lights, and the media were tipped off as to, we're going to be at this address at this time. So very, very stage managed and very media choreographed, which I don't like. That shows just how sleazy and politicized, in my view, how sleazy and politicized it is. Anyway, they had footage of 20 or something, I suppose it was, 20 arrests that were being made. Now, I just assumed the channel that was covering it, by the way, was the least left wing of the media outlets. So it's TV channel was the least. I wouldn't describe them as right wing, but if the closest to the centre of the political spectrum than all the others. So anyway, so they've got the footage of these arrests now. Anybody that looks at any violent areas, violent suburbs, and crime-ridden areas, that's where the domestic violence is. So, I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that. The idea that it only happens in well-to-do middle-class suburbs is absurd. But that's the line that they push. If you look at all the propaganda photographs, it's the nice house, the well-dressed man, beating on his poor little helpless, well-dressed, well-turned-out white, and always white, by the way. Now, the reality, of course, is quite different. In fact, that's the ideological propaganda depiction of domestic violence is about as far from reality as you can possibly imagine. So around 3/4 of the overall, this is nationally, 3/4 of the domestic violence are committed by non-white people. Of the balance, the majority of white people live in the poorer suburbs in the city housing projects, and many of them have mental health or mentally retarded problems. They have arguments over drugs and goodness knows what, and all the people there, the women and the men, they're all as bad as each other. This idea that she's the poor, helpless, trembling little victim and he's the big, that's bullshit, absolute bullshit. But anyway, so watching the footage, so I wasn't going to watch it. I just assumed they would have some propaganda bullshit of straight white middle class men being dragged off. I just assumed that's what they would do. And when I looked at the media outlet, I thought, well, maybe not. So I had a look at the thing. And of course, as you'd expect, nearly all, I think all, certainly the ones I saw, all the arrests were feral, these feral creatures, from the housing estates. Nor was it all just straight male, female stuff. It was women abusing children, adult children abusing elderly parents or relatives, and that sort of lesbians abusing each other, this sort of stuff. So there were white men, but they were all from the housing projects. They weren't middle class men. Now, this is exactly what the statistics tell us, that this is the visuals that were there pretty much exactly mirrored the statistics. If they'd gone into some of the more rural areas, then they would have had a much higher proportion of non-white people. But this was just, as I understand, it was just the city. So, but nonetheless, that depiction was about. So what was interesting here, though, none of the left-wing media channels covered. None of them showed this footage. None of them. Not one of them showed this fucking footage, because it wasn't the straight white middle class men being arrested. So they didn't want to know. It didn't fit the ideology. It didn't fit the narrative. They didn't want to know. But here's one of the most left wing. I'm looking at an article now. Here's one of the most left wing media outlets in Australia. And it's domestic violence crisis. It's a fucking crescendo. Fucking Hitler. Hitlers are everywhere, oppressing helpless women and their little children. So let's just go through this article, because we want to know how bad it is. I mean, hey, if it's a crisis, when it's a fucking pandemic, epidemic, and caused by Hitler. So now I have to, instead of getting to the facts, they have to personalize it. So it's little Jane is only 5 foot tall, and she is tiny. And her 99 foot tall, 5 million kilogram partner brutally assaults her because and the swastikas, he is covered in swastikas. And so they have to gin it up. So, and she also has a disability, and men are assaulting men. Men are fucking evil men. And, so they gin it up through. They do mention further on down that where is it down? Quite a bit further down, that there's a woman in her 80s who's being abused by her daughter, and so that's something that's how a woman who's handicapped and apparently can't move, how she can get into the court here. And now, what they don't mention here in this article is that it's a courtroom in a certain suburb of Sydney, which is the centre of the majority of the housing project housing in the city, and it is 85% non-white. Heavy migrant there, lots of people who don't speak English. So they don't say that here. So they still want to stick to this thing that's a problem of white, straight white men, middle class. But it's 85% non-white in this suburb, and they do concede further on down. And you have to read between the lines a bit here, that there's a need for interpreters. So these are people who don't speak English, which means they're migrants and recent migrants. So we've got this court that's that supposedly specialises in handling domestic violence. We've got this court that is really there for people that don't speak English and who've been ginned up by social workers to, boost the numbers. Because the more people are coming in on the supposed domestic violence issues, the more money they can hit up the government and taxpayer for. Now the staff in this domestic violence court, they're all women, and they are stunning and brave, strong women, stunning and brave. And any man in there who steps out of line, these stunning and brave, strong women put him in his place. These strong women don't take any nonsense from men. They'll teach those men, those fucking Nazi swastika wielding men, a lesson. So. And these women in this, wow, I mean, are they efficient? Not only are they stunning and brave, but they are super efficient. Well, if they're that efficient, how come the place is overrun with so many cases? Let's not worry about that. It's frantic, but it's a well-oiled machine. It's a well-oiled machine staffed by stunning and brave women. And extra women keep walking through the door seeking justice against fucking men. So the court's packed, and they've got a special safe space for women only, by the way, a safe space to protect them from men. And there are women managers in there, women supervisors who are all stunning and brave. Any man steps over the line, they're really stunning and brave, strong women will stick it up in such power. But I mean, you can tell it's a bureaucracy. the amount of acronym. I mean, the WDCVS from the AVODS, from the WVS, from the ABS, from the AVO ABS, and oh fuck me, and talk about bureaucracy run rampant. But here it is. Now there's a policy in some situations. I'm not exactly sure I can get this, but where they say the police will, if ever there's if a woman reports a domestic violence incident, even if she withdraws it later, like there can be an argument, she'll go, yeah, you better let me do this or I'm going to call the cops and say you did so and so. Now, once the woman pulls the trigger, and low-life feral creatures living in housing estates, they don't realise when they pull the trigger in the heat of the moment that they've now invited the state and the resources of the state and the ideology of the state are now in the door, and they can't stop it at this point. So once they make that call, then the police have the arbitrary power to issue an apprehended violence order, only against the man, by the way, only against the fucking Nazi swastika-wielding man. And so he now has to leave the premises. Now, if he's paying the mortgage, or he's paying the rent, or he's performing tasks around the house, like whatever, suddenly he can't do that now. So you see these women who realise, holy crap, maybe I shouldn't have really done that. I was only trying to hit him up for some money to go out and blow it on the poker machines or something. So, gee whiz, I didn't think it would go this far. I was just threatening him. I didn't want this to happen. So this is the women, the women who come in here, and so they actually have to go to court to get the apprehended violence order reversed. Now, what they don't say in this article is that that's what a lot of these cases are. They're not women who are in danger or anything. They've just had an argument, thought that, yeah, I'll fix you. I've got the ace here. I can play the ace on you, motherfucker. So now they have to try and reverse it because, well, hey, I can't afford to pay the rent. And he's been kicked out by order of the police. He won't come back until the apprehended violence order is lifted. So I have to now go to court to get that apprehended violence order. Now, there's no penalty for women who do this. If they go and say, look, I was just having a bit, I just wanted to give him some shit. I didn't realise it would go this far, and there's no penalty for those women. They're not going, well, you've misused and abused an apprehended violence order. You falsely filed a complaint or made a complaint against your partner. So you're in trouble now. There's none of that. Oh well, you got it wrong. Okay, file another one tomorrow if you want. But okay, thanks for coming. So there's no penalty, and until penalties exist for women filing false complaints, and then or trying to use the state as a way of winning an argument against your partner, then I can't see this is ever going to stop. And by the way, the activist class don't want it to stop. They want as many complaints coming in, legitimate or real or false or not. They don't care, because the more complaints come in, the more they can gin it up as being an epidemic and so on. And once the domestic violence order is issued, then there's this army of social workers come along. Did he hurt you? Oh, naughty. We'll stick it up. We'll use the power of the state to fuck him. That'll teach that motherfucker. And again, this becomes very ideological. Now, here's a case of a woman who we know. She got drunk, and she was known for getting drunk, this woman, and fell down the stairs. Like, it's 2 or 3 steps just between two rooms. And she fell down the stairs, and she's an elderly. Well, I'm not super elderly. I mean, she'd be, I don't know, early to mid 60s or something. And her husband needs a hearing aid, and so he takes the hearing aid out when he goes to bed. He's already in bed. He's asleep. She calls out to him. He doesn't hear her. He hasn't got the hearing aid in. He's fast asleep. She's outraged that he doesn't come running to help her. So she gets onto her feet and so on. And she calls. She's got to go to the hospital because she's got a broken toe or something like that. And so she goes to the hospital, and they've got a policy: if any woman comes in with injury, that they have to interview her to make sure she hasn't been violently abused by evil Nazi fascist Hitler swastika waving husband. So they do this. She's embarrassed she doesn't want to say, look, I got drunk and I fell over. That's all it was. She doesn't want to say that. So when they say, did he abuse you? Did he violently? She says, yes, he did. He's violent. That's why I've got a broken toe. So that's it. The machinery swings into action, and state funded, taxpayer funded. So people come around to the house to threaten him. You look sideways at her again and you'll be in fucking prison, you damn fucking Nazi fascist swastika waving Hitler. He's looking bewildered. What are you talking about? Yeah, you threw her down the steps, you picked her up and threw her down a flight of 1,000,000 stairs, and then you hit her with a swastika. That's what you did, didn't you? You fucking. So he's bewildered. Me, like, what are you talking about? And it must have been reasonably convincing, because they sort of weren't quite sure what to do, apparently. And they said, to her, did you make this up or something? Like what's going on? She thinks it's funny. She thinks it's a hoot. So she tells, oh, well, I was a bit embarrassed by it. I didn't want to admit that I was drunk and stumbling around. So I just thought I'd say that. I mean, you asked me. It was your fault because you asked me. Oh, well, all right, then. That doesn't matter. Okay, thanks, bye. And there's no penalty for this. There is no penalty for making these false claims. And that needs to definitely be addressed. So the women working every day, we get very serious cases. Use of deadly weapons by evil straight white men. So we have to deal with that, but we're strong women bringing these men to justice. It's a hub of female activity. Strong women are everywhere here, making sure all the staff are women. Or, men only come in if it's a police officer or a language interpreter. Now, this is this is rather disingenuous, but anyway, that's the claim. Now it goes on here and further. There's various conversations going on, a little sort of semi-private enclaves, and where women, typically talking through an interpreter, say what they want. Now, again, given the amount of interpreters there, it's clear these aren't straight white men. And there's there's talk here of all these monsters that are men. Monsters, they are monster fucking Hitler with swastikas. Little children being protected by these strong women are all over the place, and they need the protection again from all these evil men. They do admit to complications, as in logistical complications of you wanted the AVO, but now you're saying you want your partner to come in and mow the lawn and do this and do that and so on. You can't have it both ways. I want the AVO to be in place, but I still want him to come over and do all the work. No. So they do admit that sometimes these things are, as they gently put here, searching for practical solutions. Another one is the guy's gone, but he's paying the mortgage, and she's going to get kicked out of the house if she can't. So she wants him to come back just so he'll pay the mortgage, and the list goes on. Again, logistical things, which they do concede are issues, but they're very vague on what triggers the AVOs. What was it? Did he look sideways at you, or was there now? The AVOs, by the way, have a zero burden of proof, so you just ask for it and it's given to you. But then the person who it's against, your partner or ex-partner, whatever. They have to go through the full legal process to have it lifted. You can just pick up the phone and have it put on, and the state will do the rest for you. But he has to go through the time and expense. And again, given the area and the places and the sort of things, this is in an area that's again 85% non-white, heavy, not 100%, but vast areas of government housing projects, and the place is chock full of interpreters. So this is not a white thing. But again, they don't say any of this. You have to, I know because I know the areas and what goes on. But and there are other sort of subsets of AVOs, like you can't be within 200 meters of the person if you've been consuming alcohol. The subsets. I don't know how you manage these. It's like they're tripwires that are purposefully put there ostensibly to protect somebody, but that's not the case at all. So just looking through this, it's all propaganda. It's nonsense. Again, if you wanted to tease out of it the reality, then you can, but only because I know I've got a background of information to work out what's going on. Just in this courtroom alone, there are between 200 and 300 cases just in one day. Fuck. Now that requires a lot. I don't know how much time they can spend on each case. It would be a production line, wouldn't it? You just have to listen. And these ideological fanatics that work there, they just want to hear a few keywords, bang, decision made, and off they go. So women come in and they just can't breathe. They just can't breathe. They're so traumatized. Traumatized by what? What are they traumatized by? That's not explained here. Just that they're supposed to be traumatized. And they're saying that again that they're doing this, that there's these committees, endless sort of bureaucracies running around everywhere, are supposed to be combating this scourge, this evil fucking scourge, and it's going to take strong women to do it. But it's all bullshit. It's all just propaganda and fucking bullshit. So until the realities, they come to grips with the realities, which they're not prepared to, they just live in this fantasy world of ideology. and they know they've got no attempt, no effort, no desire to really address the realities of these things, that the nearly all these, if not all of these, unfortunate incidents occur in the poorest, most desperate, non-white areas of Australia, and that's just how it is. But they ideologically they cannot accept that, and they pretend it's a middle-class, straight white male issue, which it isn't and has never been. You've been a Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.